Hi, y'all. Welcome to Long Story Short. For this installment, we have Nakia Reynoso of Austin, Texas Musicians. My name is Catlin Whitington. I'm the Vice President of Campus Operations at the Long Center. I first met our guest today, Nakia, 15 or 16 years ago when I booked him to play the Austin Bat Fest on the Congress Avenue Bridge. At the time, it was his band Nakia and his Southern Cousins. And I remember thinking, man, this guy's got soul, and it's really great to still see Nakia as an integral part of Austin's music community. Him and I reconnected about 2 years ago with Music Makes Austin, a local advocacy group that advises and guides policy related to music venues, and the music industry here in Austin. Really excited to talk to you, Nakia, today about what Austin, Texas Musicians is doing and how the state of the world is affecting our musicians here in Austin.
Yeah.
As a starting point, can you tell us a little bit about Austin, Texas Musicians, how it began and what the mission is behind the organization?
Absolutely. So first off, thanks for having me on the show. And Austin, Texas Musicians began actually because a good friend of mine who was leaving Facebook as she was cashing out right when they went public told me while she was visiting for Austin City Limits that Mark Zuckerberg was really into Facebook groups suddenly, and that there was going to be a big push for this, and that I should immediately go and claim the Austin, Texas Musicians group and set that up. And I did. I went and I grabbed about 150 of my friends who were local musicians, and I invited them in, and I said, listen, this is a safe space for us to talk about things related to booking, about, gigs, instrument repair, amps, where to buy this, collaborators, songwriting, any of that. And we grew that over the course of about 10 years into now what is about almost 4,500 musicians. And I, in the process of, for the majority of that time, was the sole admin and moderator. There was a few times I would take a vacation and I'd ask somebody to moderate for me or something. But I would also, in the process, because it's a private group, review each group application, make sure they had read the rules, make sure they lived within, at the time, was 20 miles of the kind of metro Austin area, downtown, surrounding areas, and it's now up to 50 miles because Austin's grown a lot in those 10 years. And also made sure that they were working musicians, or at least trying to be working musicians. And about 2 years ago, a friend of ours, Brendan Damaris, put on an event about fair trade music in Austin, and floating this idea of trying to have fair wages across the board for musicians at venues. And he asked me to be a panelist. And when I mentioned that within the group, I saw this really exciting new energy, that people were really, talking about these issues. And fast forward another year, and a group member posted about, the kind of disheartened feelings that he was having around Free Week, and how, the misleading, the old school version of Free Week, where kind of everybody played for free and nobody paid cover, and it was just, get as many people in as you can, and not really understanding the new version of Free Week, which is essentially sponsored by folks that, Cody and the folks at Red River Cultural District and Margin Walker and all of them, they go and they find that money to pay the bands. But there was all this discussion around, musicians shouldn't play for free, free this, free that. And I said, man, I really wish that there was a way to kind of take that conversation offline first and really hash that out and talk amongst ourselves. And so I started reaching out to that person and other people that I saw in the group that were talking about these more political and advocacy-based discussions, and said, hey, what can we do? We do have a union, but we're in a right to work state. There's not really anyone advocating for us at City Hall. The Music Commission exists, but there's not even a lot of engagement there. And I'm a former chair of the Music Commission, so I know how that game works. You have to have people show up to inform and hopefully be proactive instead of reactive. But a lot of what the Music Commission has done historically has been reactive. And we really, in our discussions, wanted to change that. And so we began to say, well, maybe we should start an organization that would just focus on, serving as the trusted voice of Austin's musicians. And that became our mission, was to really engage with musicians in Austin, find out what they need, listen to them, and teach them how to be more engaged at City Hall on their own, but also to bring their message to City Hall for them.
That's great. Um, Music, especially live music, is such a social experience. How have you seen your constituents and members in the music community here in Austin respond to social distancing and the current shelter-in-place restrictions that are the current shelter-in-place restrictions?
Let's take this from two steps. Let's talk about it from when it first happened, when South by first closed and was canceled. There was a lot of people scrambling to put together shows again, rebuild lineups, or grab folks who were still coming anyway and have them play a show. And we saw some venues that were also, beginning to get into those bad practices of saying, no, come play for the exposure, and that was a little concerning. And so we reached out to those venues and those promoters and had conversations with them. And within about 3 days, it didn't matter, because then we were starting to see, we went from 100 people in a room. Now we're at 50. Oh, no, now it can only be 10, so none of it mattered at that point anyway. But in that instance, we saw, the desperation of both musicians who were really bummed out that they couldn't do the things that they normally do. And musicians are not just, most musicians in Austin are not just musicians. They also pour the drinks and work the door and run the sound. So, we were seeing immediately so many of them impacted by this in a financial way that, of course, then couples with the emotional and mental stress of it all. Really quickly, we figured out the most important thing we could do was to be a bridge of information from various parts of the community, making sure we were getting that word out. We saw very quickly that, some folks were immediately ready to start live streaming, playing from home. A lot of us had those practices in place already. Great examples of that are Lex Land, Jackie Vinson, and Joel Violet. A lot of these people were already doing these things on a regular basis, so it was easier for them to transition into playing at home. But the biggest piece, the hardest piece, was watching so many of our friends struggle to understand how they're going to, if they can, even apply for unemployment. What are the requirements for that? How do they qualify for music cares? Oh, I didn't qualify for music cares. I'm not going to get $1,000 check. I didn't have enough contracts in place, because venues in Austin, like many places around the world, operate a lot of the times just on handshake deals. So a lot of these struggles that they were having were coming out in these discussions as well. And so we began to try to help identify those folks, connect them with people, and then began to really dig into the conversations around what it is that they needed right now. Because as you know, it changes every day. And every week it's something different that's new, and there's a different thing to apply for and another opportunity. But also being mindful of what was going on with them and making sure that they weren't being taken advantage of, that they weren't just jumping into any, gig, because they thought that it was going to be good exposure, that they were at least trying to have some value, set a value for themselves, and do the right thing as a business. And that's been hard. It's been really hard. I think the musicians, we had a great discussion today in our show that's exclusive to our members called Verse and Chorus, where we just bring musicians on to the screen into the studio and talk with them about various topics that are hot at the moment. And today was all about live streaming. Who should be paying, how much should they pay, you know uh, should I go to a studio and do it, are we allowed to do it? um, the Austin musicians are very nimble. We have a very long history of transitioning and morphing into what our community needs from us in order to participate in the economy. So I think that the general vibe of musicians, aside from the confusion and the fear that comes with the pandemic and all of the financial hardships, is most musicians are finding themselves writing more music, connecting more with their audience, stepping up their game business wise by going back through their catalogs. We're seeing a lot of musicians say, wow, I just found all these songs I never submitted to BMI or ASCAP. um, you know those are the kinds of things, when everybody else is cleaning out their garage, we're all cleaning out our hard drives and our studios, finding this stuff, that we realize, oh, you know what, this was actually a good song, maybe I should finish it. So that's been mostly what we've been seeing within our community, that there's been a lot of fear and confusion, but there's a lot of resilience, a lot of adaptability, because musicians are survivors.
That's really heartening to hear. How do you feel the response from the fans and the audience has been in response to these changes, and especially in response to streaming and virtual content?
I think the response from fans at home has been overwhelmingly positive. We are seeing unprecedented amounts of engagement with different bands all over the place, because they are getting on a consistent schedule, which is the biggest key to really any music strategy. Of course, is, if you're going to go to play Dallas, one weekend, you can't just go there once a year. You got to make a consistent effort to cultivate that audience. And this is very true with live streaming, because suddenly, even though people are still working from home, they're able to do so in a much more casual environment. And many people have multiple screens, so they can have their work computer up and still watch Ray Prim, streaming live from his house. Or they can be walking their dog and still listen to a live stream of, Federico 7 at 7. Those are the kinds of things that I think we're seeing that are new, but nothing else has really changed on the business side of things. It still means the same thing. You still have to be prepared. You still have to do your best to sound good and make your streams look good. Now, that's not to say there's not room for the occasional kind of very homemade look. I mean, for excellent, a great example is the Willie Nelson streams that he's been doing. He's obviously a huge superstar, and people love that glimpse of them in a very homemade setting, and a very comfortable. It doesn't have to be high tech. They just want in. And I think most fans of any musician, that's really what they want. They want to be let in just a little bit more than maybe you might be used to. They want to see a little bit more than what you have previously given them. Another great example of somebody, is this guy, Wild Bill Ogden, who, he's hosting streams now where he's inviting people to come in and just do complete improv things, make up characters, all of these things on the spot, because why not? Try something new, see what sticks, whatever, you can get people to watch.
That's interesting. Obviously that's a little bit of light in these kind of dark times right now. And as I'm looking out the window and it's nice and sunny outside, but still it's dark times we're in. Have you noticed the content that musicians are creating, or new content, incorporating or kind of mirroring the state of the world right now in terms of the emotion or the content of their music and their creation?
I haven't heard a lot of new releases yet. I've seen some folks trying out some songs, but I haven't heard a whole lot of actual releases of things. The best example that I can give you of that is the surprise album we got from Joe Ely, who went back through all of his demos from the last 20 years and decided on a whim he would just put them out and get them mastered and mixed to the right way and put them out. And some of them were 20 years old, some of them were a few weeks old, and some of those songs are just painstakingly beautiful because there's so much emotion in them, and you can tell that he really took the time to curate that record from an emotional place, and that I thought was a really smart thing to do. For myself personally, going into this pandemic, I was already working on one song that was very motivational and uplifting, a real departure from anything that I've done. Not that I'm not normally motivational and uplifting, but it's a very pop-driven production. And it's something that I co-wrote with Gavin Jasper from Saints of Valerie, and he's producing it, and every time he sends me the new mix or the mastered version, etc., I just, first of all, I go like, wow, how am I on this track? Because it's my bluesy soulful voice but with full pop production, and I'm really excited to release it. But I've also decided that I try about once a week now to just have a night where I do a live stream of nothing but really dark, moody piano. I don't even put the camera on my face. I turn on a red light. I put the camera mostly focused on my fingers and from the side, and I just play piano. I don't even sing, and I just make it up as I go along. And it's just more of an exercise for me to really get that darkness out and purge it in that way. I can just bang on that piano if I want to. That's been really helpful for me. And, the few fans that are up that late and are tuning in have been very generous and have tipped me, and that's been really nice. But mostly I do it because I don't have a choice. I have these songs in me, and a lot of my emotions come out through music. And I think we're gonna see a lot of music that comes out of this that will be both very dark and mysterious, but also some that will be uplifting and positive too.
That's great. Where and how can fans out there find your streams online?
Well, they can just go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/ATXmusicians, or they can follow us on YouTube. We post them there as well. We do have member exclusive content that we only post within the group. So if you're watching this and you are a musician who works and lives within about 50 miles of downtown Austin, you can go to the Austin, Texas Musicians community page, which is a private Facebook group, and submit an application, and we can get you reviewed and approved and into the group, introduce you to everybody. And within that group, we're posting, like I said, the live talk shows. We're doing updates to members, and between that and the programming that we've been doing around taking our physical event that we were hosting once a week at Beerland, which is a community building event called Night Shift, where we were inviting people out to perform late at night for a jam. But for the first 3 hours, we were feeding folks pizza and sitting around the table and around the bar talking about issues related to the music community. And when the cancellations happened, we said, you know what, we have to be able to pivot this into, we don't want to stop. We this is more important than ever. So now it's basically turned into a talk show that we do once a week, Wednesdays at 7. And The last few weeks, we've had Brendan Anthony from the Texas Music Office on. We had City Council member Natasha Harper Madison. We even had an actual Texas Workforce Commissioner, Aaron Dimerson, was on the show last night and gave, he and two members of their legal counsel gave really thorough information about how musicians, especially musicians who are filing LLC taxes or sole proprietorships and that sort of thing, how the process really works for them, and letting folks know you're gonna get to a point that you hit a denial. That's normal. We're still gonna keep coming back to you. Just don't give up. That's part of the process, that you have to be denied for the state version of unemployment, but you still qualify for this new version of unemployment that's part of the CARES Act. So that was very informative, and we saw a lot of musicians who were really appreciative of that. We're still exploring other ways to get information to musicians, but the truth is the most important thing that we can do is listen to them and find out what it is they need. And that's really what these kind of talk shows or listening sessions that we're creating are about.
So tell us about this video we're getting ready to see here.
Since we're only a year old, we thought maybe it'd be great for your viewers to get to know us a little bit better. So we've put together a kind of highlight reel of some of the things that we've been doing and how we've been involved, introducing you to our Musicians Advisory Panel, that's a group of over 30 musicians in Austin that are some of the best folks in the business right now, who are from all walks of life, all genres, different races, different genders. Very, very happy and so proud of the work they're doing. They're doing things like looking into voter registrar programs. They have been delivering care packages to other folks like elderly people in the community, as well as just getting involved, rolling up their sleeves and trying to advise other folks or help people who need it. So that's what you're going to see today, is just a little bit more about what Austin, Texas Musicians is all about.
That's great. It's amazing work you're doing, Nakia. We really appreciate you taking the time to come speak with us today, and look forward to hearing more of your music in the near term. And I look forward to tuning into your dark piano stream late night.
Well, Catlin, it is late night when your children will already be asleep. And what I tell people who are tuning in is, even if you just want to have the audio on in the background and maybe, pour yourself a little something and sit back and turn the lights down and just chill out and cuddle up on the couch and just, I'll turn the reverb up a little bit higher and I'll just kind of get there together.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Nakia.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for what y'all are doing. Really appreciate it. It's time for our voices to be heard. No one wants to live or work in Austin without music.
Musicians have a very powerful voice at City Hall.
Today is the first public forum about the Live Music Fund. It's happening at City Hall.
For the first time, we really have a great structure in place to communicate with our music community on the street level.
We can activate our base to find out what it is that musicians, really do want out of this.
An added music venue designation will open the gateway for other tools through which our music community is supported.
What would you say to musicians who are really scared right now?
Live music is part of the soul of this city, and we can't afford to lose it, or we'll lose a large part of what Austin is.
You're part of my constituent base, and we really want to make sure that we're there for you.
Everything I'm going to talk about tonight is no cost, and I'm going to make sure that you all have resources about how you can connect to us.
We are going to be processing those claims to see if we can help musicians and independent contractors, artists, and gig workers receive that pandemic unemployment assistance.
Take the time to sit down and focus 100% on that creative process and write new material.
I quote my normal rate because I've decided that that's what I'm worth.
So when is it safe to start playing private gigs?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question.
Wait, is that how much you guys get?
Time stands still for me when I'm playing for these folks. They need it, and you just feel good.
It's the end of the year. We're celebrating the holidays with Ham. We're going to talk to them and find out all of the great things they've been up to this year.
If you see a blind person or anybody with a disability, don't be afraid to approach them and talk to them.